Now, morning everyone. So today we will go through the last part of your variance analysis. Right. So which we are looking on the interdependency here. Right. So we're gonna look at the slide here. Right. So which we are looking on the interdependency here. Right. So we're gonna look at the slide here. Now for your slide number 32, 33, 34, right? So these three slides is something that you need to understand from the rationale instead of memorizing. Right? So we're gonna look at material price first. So for this table, what it means is that sometimes, meaning to say, last week when you have learned how to calculate your variance analysis, you get the answer and then whether it is adverse or favorable. So from there, you must be able to interpret what does this adverse or favorable stands for. So which we are looking into what are the causes of the variances. So first of all, we look at in terms of material price variance. So for example, if let's say you get your material price variance is favorable, then what are the causes that cause this material price to be favorable? So we're gonna look at the possible causes here. Alright, so you can make good use of the point to talk about. It's like you have to make a story about your variances like that. Alright, so first point we look at using different supplier. So if we use a different supplier, whether it is a cheaper or more expensive. Now, rational thinking. If your material price is favorable, so if my material price is favorable, meaning to say that my actual price that I pay to the supplier is cheaper or lesser than the standard price that I set. So therefore, I could say that the cause of favorable material price variance is due to maybe cheaper supplier. Alright, so maybe we get the price from a cheaper supplier. Cheaper supplier in a way means that the quality of the materials that you are getting is of lower quality. So lower quality materials will lead to a cheaper material price. So for example, then if let's say my material price I get adverse, my answer is adverse. So they ask you to suggest what are the possible causes. So it depends on the question whether they give you any scenario or not. So you got to relate it back to the scenario of the question. Alright, so let's say I can even talk about maybe the company facing higher competition. For example, the company face a high competition in the industry. So in order to compete with the competitor, the company buy a more expensive materials which is of higher quality in order to maintain the quality of the product. Alright, so that could be the possible cause. Or you can use point like buying in large size order and getting larger bulk purchase discount. So for this one, if you buy large size order and you get bulk purchase discount, meaning to say that definitely in actual the price that you are paying is cheaper than the price that you have set. So the variance that you get, you may get favorable. So if you get favorable, maybe you want to use this one to talk about the causes. Or vice versa, if it is adverse meaning to say in actual you are paying more. Why you are paying more? Maybe the company buy in smaller size order and they lose all the bulk purchase discount. Or it could be unexpected increase in price charged by supplier. For this point, your variance must be adverse. If it is adverse, only you can talk about this point because in actual you are paying more. So maybe there is an unexpected increase in the price charged by the supplier, maybe due to the external environment, the market environment, due to inflation, it could be. Alright, or you can talk about let me see, unexpected buying costs such as high delivery charge. So this one is definitely adverse. In actual, you are paying more because there is a unexpected buying cost. Or you can even a change in material quality result in either higher or lower purchase price. So rational thinking, if you buy lower quality, cheaper material, definitely your material price is lower in actual. So that one, lower quality will be favorable variance. Adverse variance, it will be higher quality. In actual, you're buying a higher quality material. Then we look at material usage variance. So usage means that you are using in terms of quantity. Alright, so it can be either favorable or it can be either adverse. It depends on the answer that you get. So if let's say my answer I get adverse, then I can talk about a higher than expected rate of scrap or wastage. So meaning to say that your wastage rate in actual is higher than what you have expected. Alright, or if it is favorable, meaning that your wastage here is lesser than what you have expected. Then the second point, using different quality of material, whether it is a higher or lower quality, could affect the wastage rate. So meaning to say here, if I'm using a lower quality material, it is harder to handle this material. So therefore, the wastage is higher than expected. So that variance will be adverse material usage. If it is favorable, then it will be using a higher quality material. It is easier to handle, so there is a lesser wastage caused in favorable material usage. Alright, so these are the 2 points. Or you can talk about maybe better quality control, but if better quality control means that your variance that you get is definitely favorable. Or maybe there is a more efficient in the work procedure, result in better material usage rate. So this one, your variance is also favorable. Alright, so it depends on your answer, and then it depends on the question, what are the scenario that they give you, and then you can use these points to talk about what are the possible causes of the variances, whether it is adverse or favorable. Then we can look at labor rate. So labor rate, the first point you can look at unexpected increase in the basic rate of pay. So meaning to say here, in actual you are paying more. So this one, your variance is definitely adverse. Alright? Or maybe you pay the labor bonus where these are recorded as direct labor cost. So this one is also adverse as well. In actual, you are paying more. Or I can talk about using labor, there is either more or less experience than the standard. So if my labor rate, I get adverse meaning to say that in actual, I'm paying my labor more cost. So why? Maybe the company hire a more experienced worker or more skilled worker, then definitely rational thinking, more skilled worker, more experienced worker, you have to pay higher wages. Alright, so therefore it resulted in adverse labor rate variance. Or if I hire a less experienced worker or less skilled worker, cheaper labor will be cheaper rate. So the labor rate variance that I get, it will be favorable. So maybe the company hire a cheaper labor or less skilled or less experienced worker, that would result in favorable labor rate variance. Or maybe there is a change in the composition of the workforce, and so there is a change in the average rate of pay. So this one, definitely your labor rate is also adverse as well. Alright, so then we look at labor efficiency. What are the possible causes that could result in favorable or adverse? So, gonna look at first point, taking more or less time than expected to complete the work due to efficient or inefficient working. So, if let's say my labor efficiency that I calculate is favorable. So if it is favorable, definitely in actual you use lesser time. So if I want to make good use of this point, I got to talk about in actual, the labor used less time than expected to complete the work due to efficient working, and vice versa. If it is adverse, meaning to say in actual you use more hours, so you're taking more time than expected to complete the work. of the earlier point just now, the less experienced or the more experienced worker. So rational thinking, more experienced worker definitely their learning curve is better, so they can complete the work faster than the less skilled worker. So using labor, there is more or less experience, and so more or less efficient than the standard. So if my labor efficiency is favorable, so meaning to say I'm hiring a more experienced worker, so they are more efficient to complete the work. Therefore, it results in favorable labor efficiency variance, and vice versa. Adverse, it will be less experienced worker, they are less efficient. Then you can talk about poor supervision. Poor supervision, it must be adverse. Alright, so due to lack of supervision from the management, so it results in adverse labor efficiency. Improvement in efficiency due to a learning curve among the workforce. This one, it must be definitely a favorable labor efficiency. Alright, or unexpected lost time due to production bottleneck and resources shortages. This one, your variance is definitely need to be adverse. Alright, so it depends on case by case basis. You can't memorize it. So for your overhead variances here, so last week you learned how to calculate your fixed overhead and your variable overhead variances here. So we're gonna look at fixed overhead expenditure adverse variances. Expenditure is in terms of RM already. So if your overhead expenditure is adverse, so it could be caused by spending in excess of the budget. So therefore, a more detailed analysis of the expenditure variance could be needed to establish why the actual expenditure has been higher or lower than the budget. If in terms of variable production overhead efficiency variance, usually your variable production overhead is absorbed. It's not all the time absorbed on per unit basis. Sometimes it could be absorbed on direct labor hour basis. So when it's absorbed on direct labor hour basis, the variable overhead efficiency variances that you get, whether it is adverse or favorable, it will be directly resulted to the direct labor efficiency variances here. Right, because they are absorbed on the same basis. So you got to refer back to your direct labor efficiency variance to see whether they are adverse or favorable. Then from there, you link that 2 points to talk about what are the causes there. Then for your sales price variance, it could be either favorable or adverse as well. So if it is adverse, if it is favorable, meaning to say that higher than expected discount offered to customer to persuade them to buy or due to purchasing in bulk. So this one, if you hire more discount to customer, then your sales price variance here, it will be definitely adverse. Alright, so you are earning lesser revenue here because you give them more discount. Or vice versa, lower than expected discount perhaps due to the strength of sales demand. So this one, your sales price variance, it must be favorable. Favorable meaning to say in actual you are earning more. Alright, so you give lesser discount, perhaps due to your strong demand there. Or effect of low price offers during a marketing campaign. So you are offering a lower price, so it must be adverse here. Or it could be unexpected price increase or unexpected price cut. So it depends case by case basis. Sales volume, you are looking at volume, right? So it could be successful or unsuccessful direct selling effort. So if it is favorable, meaning to say that in actual you sell more. So sell more, it could be successful direct selling effort or vice versa. Successful or unsuccessful marketing effort, for example, the effect on advertising campaign. So when you market your product, you expected that you're going to sell more. But if let's say your volume you get favorable, then meaning to say it is a successful marketing effort. But if your sales volume is adverse, in actually you're selling less, then it could be unsuccessful marketing effort. Alright, or it could be unexpected change in the customer need and also buying habit. But this one, it must be adverse. In actual, you are selling less. Failure to satisfy the demand due to production difficulty. This one is also adverse as well. Higher demand due to a cut in the selling price or lower demand due to increase in selling price. So this one, they are linking with your sales price variance just now. So, meaning to say your sales volume is favorable, your sales price is adverse. Right? This is price, this is volume. So meaning to say if I increase, if I increase my sales price, then my sales price variance will be adverse. Alright, it will be adverse. And then the volume here, so meaning to say if your selling price is higher, you sell more expensive. You sell more expensive, then maybe your customer may choose not to buy from the company. They have other competitor. Your company have other competitor. Then they will shift their buying choices. Alright, so therefore it would result in lower demand from the customer. So your sales volume, it will become adverse. So this one, they are linking your sales volume and your sales price here. So meaning to say your sales volume is showing adverse, and then your sales price here is showing as favorable. So it's opposite, meaning to say in actual, your selling price is higher. Yes, you sell more expensive. But when you sell more expensive, there is a drop in the sales here. There is a lower demand from the customers. Alright, so it could be this way, or it could be if you cut your selling price. So you cut your selling price, meaning to say that in actual, your selling price is lesser, so it becomes adverse. And then due to cheaper prices, there is an increase in your sales volume. So here it will show favorable. So it depends on your answer. When you calculate your answer, whether it is adverse or favorable, then there is how you got to exercise your rational thinking. Alright, so just now the part that I'm linking like different variants together, I'm linking both. That is called interdependence. Alright, so which is this part? So interdependence of variances, it refers to a situation where one variance might be interrelated with another, and one variance might have occurred because of other variants occurred too. Meaning to say they shouldn't be in isolation. So the variances should not be investigated in isolation, because the occurrence of the variances as to the causes or reason, just now the tree table it show you the possible causes, right? But you shouldn't investigate them in isolation. One variances, it could be result of another variances where they have relationship there. So it may be interrelated or interdependence with other variances. So therefore, your variances should be investigated in total to determine the correct cause or reason of such variances occurred. Alright, so giving you an example, due to your actual selling price is more than standard selling price. So meaning to say your product is more expensive now. Right? So when your product is more expensive, your customer buy less. So your variance here that you get, your sales price variance it shows favorable, but your sales volume variance shows is adverse. So how are you going to explain the possible interdependency of the two variances here? So I could say because due to the expensive product that the customer that that the company are selling, so therefore the customer buy less. So in a way, your sales price variance, yes, it shows favorable, but your sales drop, your customer buy lesser, it result in adverse sales volume variance. So this is called interdependency. Alright, so another example, if let's say I buy cheaper material which is lower quality materials, so how it is going to affect my material price and material usage, labor efficiency. So we're gonna look at here. So if I buy a cheaper material, yes, my material price variance, it will result in favorable because in actual I'm paying lesser, so it's cheaper material. But due to a cheaper material, they are of lower quality, it's harder to handle them. Therefore, it costs a higher wastage, more wastage. Therefore, it results in adverse material usage variance. Alright, so if let's say the company also hire a less skilled worker, so maybe your labor rate efficiency that you calculate is, let's say is favorable. So if your labor rate efficiency is favorable, meaning to say it could be I'm hiring a less experienced worker or less skilled worker. So less skilled worker, their learning curve is not that great, alright? So they are less efficient. So if let's say my labor efficiency variance, I also get adverse, then I can make a story here. So perhaps due to the company hiring a less skilled worker, they are less efficient, therefore they result in a higher wastage, therefore it results in adverse labor efficiency variance. Or I could link material usage with labor efficiency. So cheaper material, more wastage, right? So more wastage. So therefore, in actual, your labor use more time to complete the work due to the lower quality material. So alright, so or adverse efficiency variance. Alright, so or I could talk about my fixed overhead volume variance. So if let's say my fixed overhead volume variance shows adverse, then I could probably say due to there is a stop in the production, so therefore output reduced. So meaning to say lower quality materials is harder to handle. Alright, so eventually the output that we produce is lesser in actual. Alright, so therefore, when there is a stop in the production, the output is reduced. The output that produced is reduced in actual. Alright, so therefore, it results in adverse fixed overhead volume variance. Alright, so this fixed overhead volume variance, so maybe I could link it to my sales volume variance as well. That shows adverse. So if it shows adverse, meaning to say that the company not able to meet the customer demand caused by the production output shortage. So meaning to say sales volume, meaning to say that in actual you are selling lesser units. So why are you selling lesser units? It could be due to just now our production stoppage here. We could not produce our output as expected. Alright, so that's why your fixed overhead volume is adverse. So it results in your sales volume variance adverse as well. So it looks like you got to make like a story like that from the rationale thinking. Alright, so from the answer that you get, you got to link with other variances. So the variance analysis here, as we mentioned, variance analysis is very tedious process, alright? So you got to investigate your material, your labor, your variable overhead, your fixed overhead, your sales price variance, your sales volume variance. So all these tasks are very tedious. So what are the factors that we need to consider whether or not we should investigate the variances? Now, first of all, we're gonna look at how accurate or how reliable is your budgeted figure. Alright, so that is one factor that you you should consider, because if let's say your forecasted budgeted figure is not accurate, not reliable, then it will be a waste of time if we go and investigate the variances here. Or another factor you should consider is the materiality quite of significance of variances. Meaning to say, materiality means that the company needs to set how many percentage of the materiality, then we will be only investigating the variances. So it depends on the company, how many percent that they set there. Or we have to conduct a cost and benefit analysis. So we got to list out what are the costs that incurred in order to investigate these variances. Meaning to say we have to weigh our cost and benefit here. So if our cost is greater than our benefit, then definitely we will not further investigate our variances, right? So, or we should consider what are the interdependency of the variances, and what we have done just now, and what are the trend in the variances, and what are the controllability there. Right, so I will go for this one. Okay. Now, sometimes it depends on the question. Sometimes maybe they don't ask you to do any calculation, so you skip all the part of the calculation, but they give you all these variances. Then they want you to tell a story. So let's say Alibaba Sdn Bhd use a standard costing system to control the various costs of its business. So an extract from the company operating statement reveals the following variances. So you are given sales volume profit variance is 3008 at first. Sales price variance is 5580 favorable. Your direct material price variance is 3000 favorable. Your direct material usage is 2350 adverse. Now, part A suggests a possible reason for each of the 4 variances listed above. So, each of these variants, you need to talk about the possible reason that has caused the variance adverse or favorable. And then, your answer should also identify possible interdependency between the variances. So it depends on you which variance that you're gonna link it with another one. Alright, so we're gonna look at the sample answer here. So first of all, we look at your sales volume variance is the adverse. So meaning to say in actual, your sales unit is lesser. So this is caused by actual sales unit is being less than the budgeted. So this could be a result of, so they are linking to your sales price variance. So this could be a result of increase in the selling price that shows a favorable sales price variance, or it could be reduced quality where they link it to your favorable material price here. Right? In actual. Yeah. So for favorable sales price variance, this is caused by your actual selling price is higher than your standard. Why? This could result in a reduction in the sales demand. So a reduction in the sales demand, they are linking to the adverse sales volume variance, alright? As evidenced by adverse sales volume variance. So they link it. It would usually be caused by a management decision to increase the price, maybe possibly in anticipation of the cost increase. So you're going to look at favorable material price variance. So what is the possible cause here? This is caused by actual material price being less than your standard. Why? Now they are linking to your usage and volume. So you're going to look at here. This could be due to buying a lower quality material. Alright, so buying a lower quality material, it results in favorable material price variance, but lower quality, it will cause a higher wastage. So therefore, it results in adverse material usage variance and adverse sales volume variance. Alright, alternative explanation include it could be abundant supply of material in the market. Then the last part, adverse material usage variance, then link it to the favorable material price variance. So this is caused by using more material than the standard. This could be result of using a poor quality material, resulting in higher wastage, or could be due to careless usage of material, causing the excess waste. Right, so when you look at the answer, first of all, you got to talk about what are the causes of this adverse or favorable variance, and then you have to like make a story and link it to another variances interdependently, right? So explain the term attainable standard and ideal standard. So this one no issue, you can grab from your notes. Attainable standard meaning to say that it is based on the allowance on the normal loss. So it's a standard where one can be attained if the standard unit of work is carried out efficiently, or a machine properly operated, or material properly used. So there is allowances made for normal loss, normal waste, normal machine downtime. Alright, so they represent what should be achieved with a reasonable level of effort under the normal operating conditions. So what is ideal standard? Ideal standard is based on perfect working environment. So this one, ideal standard can be achieved under the most favorable condition where we don't have allowance for normal loss, normal waste, or normal machine downtime. So they are set on the assumption of maximum efficiency and a perfect and ideal operating environment. And so part 2, discuss which standard is most appropriate to use when you set performance measurement level. So, performance measurement level are best based upon attainable standard. Ideal standard will normally prove to be impossible to attain, and it will always result in a large adverse variances, which will give an inappropriate signal to your management and possibly damage the motivation. Right? Attainable standard is not necessarily easy to be attained, and it can include a target element to encourage a better performance, while at the same time result in variances that are useful in controlling the cost and revenue. So part C, some authorities view that traditional variance analysis as unhelpful and misleading in modern business environment. Explain 3 problems of using standard costing variance analysis in today's business environment. I think this one is already in your this one we already went through earlier the problem. I don't remember where. Maybe it is on the chapter. I won't go through again because it's exactly the same with your last week slide, which is on the slide 11, right? So it's exactly the same one. Then this one is briefly discuss 3 factors that should be considered in deciding whether or not to investigate the cause of the explanation, it comes from here. Alright, so this diagram, the explanation is this one. Alright, so you can read it by yourself. So I'm gonna go to the calculation, the last part here. So what type of direct material price and usage variance will arise if your actual quantity of material used exceeds the standard quantity allowed? This is usage, alright? So in actual you use more, definitely is the adverse. And your actual purchase price is less than the standard purchase price. So in actual, you are paying lesser, cheaper. So the price, it must be favorable. So the answer would be A. Then we're gonna look at the last question. So AX Sdn Bhd, a manufacturing company, use the standard costing system for a single product. Now, standard cost is always measured in terms of per unit basis. So you have your raw materials, you have your direct labor, variable overhead is based on labor hour basis. Your fixed overhead is absorbed in terms of per unit basis. So your fixed overhead is absorbed based on production of 40,000 units per month. Actual result for the last month were all of these, and then compute the following variances. So we're gonna start with our direct material price. So material price variance, what are you comparing? You are comparing your standard price with your actual price. The whole thing you multiply with your actual quantity. Alright, so you go back to the question just now. Your standard price for material is 1 ringgit per kilo. Your actual price per kilo, you don't know. But your direct material purchase and use in total is 2 million kilo at the cost of 2.4 million. So therefore, 2.4 million divided by 2 million, then you will get actual material price per kilo. Right, so therefore you get 1 ringgit 20 here. 2.4 divided by 2, you get 1.2. So 1 minus 1.2 multiply with your actual quantity is 2 million kilo here. So therefore you get RM 400,000. So is it adverse or favorable? So you ask yourself. Standard price is 1 ringgit, but in actual I'm paying 1 ringgit 20. So in actual I'm paying more, so definitely it's the adverse. So material usage variance, I'm comparing quantity. So standard quantity compared with actual quantity minus, then I multiply with standard price. So the standard quantity, you go back to the question. Per unit, how many kilo you need? You need 20 kilo. Alright, so 20 kilo and your actual quantity here is 2 million kilo. Now, if I use 20, I minus 2 million, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, standard quantity, this one is for actual production. Actual production. Meaning to say, this 2 million kilo represent how many units? It is for 50,000 units. So therefore, the 20 kilo for 1 unit, I need to compare apple with apple. So 20 kilo, I need to multiply with my actual basis. Actual production is 50,000. So 20 multiplied with 50,000, right? This is my standard part, and then I minus 2 million, and the whole thing I multiply with the standard price for the material is 1 ringgit per kilo. So 50 times 20 or 1 million. So your standard here is 1 million. Alright, so you expect you're going to use 1 million kilo, but in actual actual you use 2 million kilo. So your variance here is RM 1 million. So is it adverse or favorable? Definitely adverse. In actual, you use more kilos than what you have expected. Then you look at labor rate. Direct labor rate, you are comparing the rate. So you are comparing standard rate with your actual rate. Then the whole thing, you multiply with your actual hours. So you have to go back to the question. Labor. Okay, so your direct labor, how much is the standard rate per hour? Is 15 ringgit per hour. So how much is the actual rate per hour? You don't know. But you know that your total cost is 840K. You got to divide it by 60,000 hours. So your actual rate per hour is 14. Compare with 15. Alright, so 15 minus 14, you multiply with 60,000, you get 60,000 ringgit. So is it adverse or favorable? So you ask yourself, you expect to pay your labor 15 ringgit, but now in actual I'm paying 14 ringgit. So definitely it's good. So it's a favorable. Then you go for labor efficiency. Labor efficiency, you're comparing in terms of hours. So standard hours minus the actual hours, whole thing multiplied with your standard labor rate per hour. Alright, so your standard rate, standard hour per unit. 1 unit, you need 1 hour. Alright, so but your total labor hours is 60,000. So if I use 1 minus 60,000, it doesn't make sense. This 60,000 is represent 50,000 units. So therefore, that 1 hour, after comparison, I need to multiply with 50,000. It's fine. 1 multiplied with 50,000, you get 50,000 hours. And then you minus with your total actual hours is 50,000 hours. Whole thing you multiply with your standard rate per hour is 15 again. So your variance here is RM 150K. So is it adverse or favorable? When you expect the labor is going to use 50,000 hours, but now in actual, your labor use 60,000 hours. So they are using more hours, definitely it's not good, so therefore it's adverse. Then variable overhead expenditure. Expenditure is already in RM. Alright, so you are comparing your actual variable overhead incurred in RM minus the overhead absorbed. So how to calculate your overhead absorbed? You use your OAR multiplied with actual basis. So your variable information here is not absorbed on per unit. So you're gonna look here. Variable overhead is 1 hour at 5 ringgit per hour. So they are absorbing on hour basis here. So your variable production overhead incurred in RM is already given, RM 280K. So your overhead absorbed here, your OAR here is 5 ringgit per hour. So I need to multiply with my actual labor hour is 60,000. Right, so here RM280K is my actual overhead incurred minus my overhead absorbed, which is OAR 5 ringgit multiplied with 60,000 labor hours. So my variance here is 20,000. So is it favorable or adverse? So you ask yourself. So there are 2 ways you can look at. One view is from this. My actual overhead incurred is 280K, but when I budget is 300K. So now in actual I'm spending lesser, definitely it's good, so it's favorable. Another point you want to look from under or over absorbed also can. So meaning to say your actual overhead incurred is 280K, right? So your overhead absorbed this portion is 300K. So do you under or over absorb? You definitely over absorb 20K. So when you over absorb 20K, what should you do? Over absorb means you over calculate your expenses, right? So now you need to reduce back your expenses. if you reduce back your expenses, it's definitely good. So it's the favorable. So two point of view you can look at. So variable overhead efficiency. Efficiency is always in terms of the quantity. You are comparing standard hour with your actual hours and you multiply with the standard rate. Right, so your actual hours here, your actual labor hours here is 60,000. So if I use 1 minus 60,000, it doesn't make sense, right? So I have to compare apple with apple. This 60,000 is for 50,000 units. So therefore, 1 hour per unit, I need to multiply with 50,000 units, I get 50,000 minus 60,000, multiply with my OAR, the standard rate is 5 ringgit per hour. So I get 50 RM 50K. So is it adverse or favorable? So you ask yourself. When you budget, you got the hours you expect to use 50,000, but now in actual you use 60,000. Definitely you use more hours, so it's a adverse. Then fixed overhead expenditure. Again, when it comes to expenditure, you are measured in terms of RM. So it's already given. You have to use your actual fixed overhead incurred in RM compared with your budgeted fixed overhead in RM. So you refer back to the question just now. So your fixed production overhead is 83,000 ringgit. So this is the actual one. But your budgeted fixed production overhead, you don't know. But what you know is that your fixed overhead per unit, your FOAR is 2 ringgit, and your basis here is absorbed on the production of 40,000. So your budgeted basis here is 40,000. So you have to apply back your OAR formula. How to get OAR? You use budgeted overhead divided by your budgeted basis. So now your FOAR is 2 ringgit. I don't know how much is my budgeted overhead in RM. Right? Then your budgeted basis here is 40,000. So therefore, 2 multiplied with 40,000 is what? Is your budget portion, which is 80K. You minus 83K. So you get RM 3K. So is it adverse or favorable? In actual, you are spending more. So therefore, it's a adverse. Fixed overhead volume. Volume is the basis. So you are comparing. Now, fixed overhead, the basis here is units. So I have to compare my budgeted volume with my actual volume. So my budget production is 40,000 units. My actual production is 50,000 units. So 40,000 minus 50,000 multiply with OAR rate, which is 2 ringgit per unit. So you get 20,000 ringgit. So is it favorable or adverse? So you ask yourself. When you budget, you're going to produce 40,000. But now in actual, I'm producing 50,000. So definitely in actual, you overproduce by, you overproduce. So you overproduce means it's good. So it's a favorable.